or you don't feel right, or you have a nasty rash keeping you up at night. Don't worry about a thing.
Don't worry.
'Cause Atticus Health will make you feel alright.
I'm Ilana Razbash, and this is Radio Architecture.
Good evening from beautiful Bunurong country. We are broadcasting to you live from the unceded lands of the Eastern Kulin Nation, where the First Peoples, the Bunurong people, have been making music, coming together, sharing stories, and connecting to land, waters and sky since time immemorial. And it gives me great pleasure to be broadcasting this evening for the 100th time, for the 100th broadcast of Radio Architecture by Studio Razbash. I'm your host, Ilana Razbash, and it's been such a pleasure to be able to be with you every Wednesday night for more than 2 years now. And we thank our listeners from far and wide from across this amazing continent of Australia, and those that are even listening from overseas, those that catch up on YouTube, hello, I'm giving the camera a wave there, and those who tune in on podcast. We love you, we appreciate you, we enjoy receiving your text messages and your feedback and your kind words, and thank you so much for being with us on this journey. The phone line again to join the conversation tonight is 0493 213 831. We'd love to have you with us, and I'm sure my guest and conversation partner will also greatly enjoy your questions. Tonight I have here with me in the studio Mia Salsjo. She is a Swedish, Albanian, Australian artist. She grew up in Melbourne and is an extended family, and her extended family includes her maternal grandfather, a high-ranking government official and dissident refugee who opposed the repressive measures of Albania's Enver Hoxha regime. Irina, her ballerina mother, and father Peter, a Swedish rock musician and successful fashion designer. Under the guidance of her parental grandfather, orchestra conductor Mia Salsjo, she learned to read music from a young age, later graduating from the Victorian College of the Arts in jazz improvisation. Her subsequent degree in visual arts led Salsjo to be arranging music systems, visual art and music into complex multidisciplinary works and performances. Mia is also a graduate of the internationally accredited Kundalini Research Institute. Alongside her ongoing art practice, she teaches Kundalini Yoga as a Jyoti Tajikar. She recently lives in the Melbourne suburb of Brunswick with her partner, writer and curator Damien Smith, and Pixie, their much-loved miniature pincher. Salsjo's projects, grounded in complex code-based systems, encompass drawing, music, composition, text, performance, video and textile-based works. Her works have been included in the major international exhibitions, including Construction of the Possible, the 13th Havana Biennale in Cuba in 2019, where the Havana Chamber Orchestra performed Salsjo's score. The other recent exhibitions include The Bridge, a score for Sydney Harbour Bridge 2023, Museum of Contemporary Art Australia, with performances in collaboration with the Sydney Opera House, and a score for Federation Square 2022. Acquisitive commission by the National Gallery Victoria and Federation Square, recorded at Hamer Hall and performed by musicians from the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Carlo Antonelli. Other works include A 1,000-Year Plan for Gertrude Glasshouse, Melbourne, 2022, Modes, Forms and Performances, La Trobe Regional Gallery, Morwell, in 2020, the score for Ian Potter Museum of Art, University of Melbourne, 2017, and Mia Salsjo Prints, Drawings, Multiples, Australasian Cultural Art Exchange Gallery, Melbourne, 2019. In 2021, she was awarded a City of Melbourne grant to compose The Quietude in 2021, which was performed live at Bunjil Place, Narre Warren. Salsjo holds a Master of Fine Arts First Class from the Victorian College of the Arts, Melbourne, and is currently a resident artist at Hayden's, Melbourne. Across these works, Salsjo has drawn on the architectural plans and designs of architects, including lab architecture with Bates Smart, McBride Charles Ryan, and Vittorio Goretti's Cuban Ballet School, developed as a component of Ricardo Porro's master plan. As a culturally and politically sensitive site, Salsjo negotiated site access at the highest levels of the Cuban administration. More recently, the Gavette Brewster Len Lye Centre, New Zealand, Aotearoa, acquired 1,000 works on paper produced by Salsjo as part of the RAMP Commission. The works explores the visionary legacy of artist Lin Lai and the museum space, designed by Patterson architects that contain his works. Later in August, Salsjo will be rehearsing and recording her new orchestral score at the Park Road Post-Production, an internationally renowned purpose-built facility in Wellington, New Zealand, where she will be with the musicians from the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Hamish McKeish. The score constitutes Salsjo's numeric translation of the Gavette Brewster Len Lye Centre into sonic form. Following the recording, the artist and the ensemble will head to the New Plymouth for 5 live performances alongside the Gavette Brewster Len Lye Centre. The sound recording will then be installed alongside Salsjo's RAMP Commission installation of drawings. Welcome to the program, Mia. I do believe that is perhaps the longest bio I have read, but it is fitting because we are in the triple digits now.
Yes, well, thanks for having me. I was really excited when you offered me the invitation to come in and chat with you.
It's actually such a massive pleasure and honour to meet you in person because I'm a huge fan of your work, and it was that Fed Square score that we'll talk to later in the conversation that was first my gateway and entry into discovering your work and seeing your drawings, and my mind was completely blown. And then when we started our practice studio, Razbash and I would explain to people that we combine architecture with acoustics and audio. People often say, "Do you know Mia?"
Oh, really?
Or when I had my recent exhibition, two people said, "Do you know Mia?" And I feel that we work from different directions. So you start with the architecture and you move to music.
Yes.
And in our situation, we start with music and sound, or we walk towards
yes.
the architecture.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in tonight's conversation.
Likewise.
There is one question that I like to ask all my guests first, and that's, what's your earliest memory of a building or place?
Yes, well, there's a few because my childhood was quite dynamic in the spaces I inhabited, and so was the architecture of my emotions, actually. I was one of those kids that was determined to get what she wanted if she really wanted it. And so this is one of the memories I have is I remember just crying on my mum and dad's bed and so disappointed because they weren't going to let me get a horse, which they simply could not afford, and had no idea what horses were about. However, let's cut a long story short. Someone at my auntie's place in Port Campbell offered me a pony, a Welsh Mountain pony, and so mum and dad finally said, okay, but it was very difficult for them because, things were tough at that time, and they just did it because I was so determined. But I just remember the salty kind of tears because I'd cry all the time about having a horse because I just loved ponies and horses. And I remember when I got my first saddle, I slept with it in bed, and the smell of the leather, the English leather, you could get Indian leather or English leather, and it was very different in its, one was harder and one was softer. And so, I got right into all the technical stuff of horse gear. But yeah, I just remember all that. And then going to the horse, mum and dad had to drop me off early in the morning on the weekend, and they couldn't pick me up until like 9 o'clock at night. So I would just lie down in the stable in all the hay with the horse, and I'd just be in heaven. I just wanted to stay there forever. I hated school. I was terrible at school, and I just wanted to be with the horse and become an Olympic dressage rider. And then another one is when my grandfather, who taught me music, my first language, because speaking English was certainly not my I wasn't so good at it at school until year 10, but my grandfather taught me music at a very young age and taught me to appreciate it, as well as my parents. But he took me to Handel's Messiah at Hamer Hall, and when I walked into that pavilion, I was only so young, maybe 10 or 11, but I still was overwhelmed by the beauty and the fact that was a sound resonation tank I mean, couldn't think like this now, but back then. But now I can say that I was in awe of it, and the fact that the musicians were playing on the amazing musicians on the stage, and just the whole setting, the colours, the just the seating, and it's the huge tall ceiling, the cathedral-like kind of presence of it. It was just so exquisite, and also kind of a little bit haunting for me as well, because I was entering this ritual like it Handel's Messiah. So it was just like, wow. So that was a real experience that stayed with me forever, really. And I do frequent Hamer Hall now.
How old were you when you first started playing music?
Probably, really young.
What was your instrument?
I started just improvising on making up songs. I used to make up songs in different made-up languages on the piano. I played to my Cabbage Patch doll, actually. Mum's got photos of me, because I could sit in the music room and just sit on the piano and just make up stuff, make up songs and languages with it. So I sort of started there, and then I went on to recorder and when I got to primary school. And then by grade 3, I was playing all the recorders, so all the different sizes. And then my grandfather and my mum and dad probably, or the teacher at school, the music teacher, said she should go on to flute, as the next thing after recorder, because she's ready for it in grade 3. And then that just really took off. It was easy. It wasn't hard for me to read dots and lines. It wasn't hard for me to read. It was easier to read music than to read books. I mean, I couldn't read. I had a very hard time with comprehension at school. So really I say that my first language was the architecture of the language of music, really, which I see as an architecture. So that's when I started sort of Amy B exams at grade 3, and by grade 6 I think I was doing grade 7 flute or 8 or something. I was going quite well. Yeah.
That recorder memory, I want to pause on it. It's very Australian, right? I don't think anyone else is giving their primary school kids these little plastic tubes, really, are they?
Which, the recorders?
The recorder.
Yeah. Oh, everybody plays a recorder, don't they?
Every Australian primary school plays the recorder.
It's the thing to do. They give them a recorder because it makes a sound instantly, or a keyboard. The recorder. Oh, I loved it. I loved going on to the bigger recorders though, and I remember going over to my teacher's house when I started flute and opening up, like I would go into his room and he had all these instruments in the cupboards, and sometimes the entire lesson I drove him crazy. I would be opening up the cupboards, getting him to take the instruments out, like bass recorders and flutes and big, bassoons. He had everything, and I'd make him open them and just put it on there because I just wanted to look at the keys and like all the stuff on the, the mechanisms on the instruments and things like that. And we'd spend sometimes a whole lesson. He'd get really agitated.
But nonetheless still had the patience.
He was very gorgeous. He was really he thought I was really great. And I knew it. So that's why I sort of ran the class.
Coming back to that first memory of getting what you want. I'm then curious, why didn't you pursue music studies straight away? Why visual art? I
did. I went straight to VCA jazz improvisation though.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because I was classically trained, and then I was like, no, because my older sister, she did jazz at VCA, and I looked up to her and I thought that was great. So I was like, I want to do it too, So once I finished, that was the easiest thing for me to do, was to go into music, and thank goodness for music, because it got me through year 11 and 12 and school. I don't know if I would have got through if I didn't have music. So, I went straight to the VCA, Jazz Improv, which was a real challenge because I was classically trained and I had a great inner ear and oral ability, but I didn't know the language of jazz, and I was put in to one of the top schools in Australia, where most of the people had been out gigging, you know, and playing in bands, and now that's a dynamic language of its own. That communication, especially in jazz, it's a different thing to classical. You know, you don't have notes in front of you or anything like that. You've got to have great timing and understand form, a strong understanding of form, and the chord changes and all that sort of stuff. So I had to learn that. It was more of a shock to me, and I was young. So
I was just about to wonder how confronting was that shift from rigorous classical to the strange freedoms of jazz.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool.
And openers of those doors and portals.
Yes.
Just quickly touching on your ability to visualize and create these associations with form and texture. And I imagine you're meaning this not just in the musical way, but also in the physical build way, in the architectural way. Did you always have this ability to visualize and to see things through sound? Or was it something that developed as a result of your jazz studies?
It's a good question, because I've never really thought I had anything really at all.
It was normal for you.
Like I just think, I can just do that. I can do it. So anybody can do it. That's what I say, like, to myself. Anybody can do it, like, and they can. But I think there's an extra sort of element of connection in my brain that is a bit different sometimes when I do it, because I seem to be able to tap into sort of these portals, let's say, or I see them like rhizomes or sort of these superstructures, and start to sort of exist inside there and calculate it, like turn it into something like of my own understanding, and then project that out somehow.
You're designing your own universe a little bit.
I'm not talking jargon, but...
No.
Yeah.
I'm following with you because, like many architects, I have the ability to visualize and see things in 3D in their entirety. And I can revolve that model in my head, and I can see it in its entire complexity. So I'm able to see things before I design them, before I draw them. I can also design and make decisions in the process of making it, but I can really see what I'm after before I create it.
Yes.
So I wonder if you two are designing, in a way, some of these worlds before you're writing the music.
I think I do, but like I've come from a really kind of... I started, when I got into visual art at VCA, well, painting, I chose painting. I had rejected music. I'm going to add to what you're saying, just in an alternate way. Rejected all my music. So I gave up music. I was teaching music. I was teaching year 10 to 12s at Ballarat High School and primary school at Deep Dean Primary School in Balwyn, and I was gigging and sometimes putting licks down for record companies, and playing with classical jazz. But I just one day woke up and thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm over it. And I'd been working at I'd been going to the Victorian Artists Society on Albert Street, doing drawing of still life and life drawing, and with all the kind of older community there that was very dedicated to their art with easels. And so I was doing very traditional kind of drawing and studying plastered casts of feet and heads and all sorts of things. And then we'd have a life model every now and then, and that was exciting. And so I was doing that, and I really got into the Angry Penguins, like Albert Tucker and Joy Hester and all that.
Yes.
Whole story at Heidi. However, I gave music up, and I said I was never going to touch it again. That was it. My flute's packed up. It's in the cupboard, done, finished. That part of my life is over. However, I then in VCA painting, all my teachers kept saying, because I was just picking threads from canvas, and I got that from studying like an Albert Tucker painting, like looking into the paint work in like the art, say, structure of his paint. And I once saw the thread inside it, the canvas, like the warp and weft, and I was like, that is unbelievable. I can't how could that come through his paint? Like, and I just thought it was profound. It was just my mind just going into some, exciting place that was just so not probably exciting at all. But it's like I made it up that was profound. You could see this material through the paint, and the thick paint blob next to that particular spot was a black portrait. Oh. And it was quite amazing. And I just thought, and then I started looking at the canvas and going, I just want to pull it out. I just want to pull it out. I just want to pull that face out. I want to pull the face of the painting out. So I just started pulling threads out, and that's all I did. And I got into that with VCA. But the thing is, I kept doing that. So all these material works where I was just pulling threads, the warp and the weft, and then designing different sort of things inside that. And then I was like all about being able to see through to the wall, and how profound that was as well. Like how this kind of void, this space behind, and that what is that, like that passage through the canvas, like and the fact that those things hold such powerful images and historical kind of messages to us. But actually, if you go beyond that, it's just nothingness or something. Like, so I had this whole thing going on. Anyway, the teachers kept on saying, that's so rhythmical. Can't you see that chunk? They'd say, looks so what you're doing is so musical, and can't you you've had music. And I'd say, I'm not having anything to do with music, just drop it.
It's funny how the thing you avoid and you run from is what always comes back, isn't it? Even as you were describing the warp and the weft of the canvas, and I of course work with canvas frequently, but the grid, right, and the line of the canvas is almost a staff.
Yes.
Almost a musical staff. Yes. And then you described that black head from the portrait, and I thought, a note emerges on the staff very quickly in the artwork.
Yeah. So, and then one day I decided to go and look at sound art, finally, because other kids in my year were going, we're going to an opening, with sound art, and like it's got this sound, and and it's and it's really good, and usually I'd be like, oh no, I'm staying in my studio, I've got to work out some things, because I was in the studio the longest. The security guard would come and kick me out at night, and so anyway, I decided to go and check out some sound art, and I was really, because I'd come from intense music, and I'd been brought up on classical orchestral music, and and I loved it, but I was sort of over it as well as sort of having I don't know what. So I went and I started like going, I don't get this, like I really don't get it. I don't understand why that relates to that kind of thing. And then I was like, I'm just not in that head. I don't have that headspace like for sound art. So. But I thought, hang on, I kept thinking about it because it was popular. Like was getting popular, sound art with art, and they call it sound art. So I started in my studio thinking about it and going, but I know what that's all about. I know those frequencies. I know those overtones. I know that kind of noise sound. I've studied it. I studied the futurists. I've done stuff like that. I've studied John Cage. But that to me is not like how I relate to sound and visual. So I thought, okay, this has to happen together, not apart, not separate. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start to use the skills that I know in composition into, firstly, I decided how I thought about it for a long time because it was hard, and I just thought, how does the art and the vision, the sound and the vision actually speak to each other precisely? Like, I want that to happen. Like, so I decided, because I was making some video works, I decided that I'd work out, because I love orchestral, just looking at the architecture of orchestral scores as well. I just can flick through them and just look at the design of the symphony, like, and just go far out that makes this boom sound, this incredible sound. So I decided to go, right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go backwards, turn this code here, which is the orchestral score with the black dots on the lines, and I'm going to, turn it all into numbers, and then I'm going to insert that into the digital frames. So then I had it for 2 weeks. I was just ticking the metronome to work out precisely what a metronomic crotchet 80 equals 18 frames or whatever. So, and I did it at different speeds. And so anyway, I come back and say, okay, now I'm going to start with Shostakovich's Symphony 12.
Yeah, start with the easy one.
Yeah. and so I thought I'm going to interview a range of voices. So from old, double bass is going to be an older man's voice, and piccolo is going to be my little nephew's, Roman, his little squeaky voice at the time, because it was so high-pitched and squeaky. So I just recorded him not saying anything, just squeaking. And that was a piccolo, and, I put all these voices into these instruments. And what I did was I basically followed the intonation of the voice, so it wasn't a language at all, into the form of the orchestral score, but in the exact number of frames within each subdivision of the rhythm. So the rhythm, like a crotchet, is 18 frames. So if it was a crotchet, they'd be holding for 18 seconds, and then it would divide up. So they'd all be sort of mouthing the work parts of the instruments in that precise matching of numbers together.
You turned it into a code, into a science.
Yeah. So then I realised, I've done it. That's what I want for my sound art. And then I did it again with a Debussy score, and eyeballs breathing in and out, and they were projected like a cluster on the ceiling. And then another one with this wild kind of opening and closing vessel, and that was like I put Swedish Kulning music, which is the herding music, into what was it? Probably a Telemann score, or I don't know, something. So I started like that, and then I kept that going, and I did a number of those video works, and then it's just now turned to a 360, and I've come right around, and I'm immersing my body in architectural sites, because architecture for me is so exquisite and just so, like, it just sings in my soul. Like I see it, as they say, the frozen music, or what do they describe it as, something
it's
like
frozen
that.
Music.
Yeah,
I've heard that quote. I mean, and your drawings are so compelling as well, and how you overlay and transpose this score into the architectural drawings and what you extract from it, and how you start turning that into music. I remember really that work is my favourite part of the Melbourne Now exhibition.
Thank you.
There was a couple of years ago, and I heard it first, walking through the gallery at Federation Square. You start hearing the score because the sound bleeds through the space. I'm like, this is really interesting. Come in. And then I was just blown away by these drawings and the complexity. And as I read out in your bio, it's thousands and thousands of sheets. And one of your symphonies is thousands of pages. What fuels you? What fuels that tenacity? Because it's labour intensive, of course, right? There's a very hard work.
Yep.
What's that? What gives you that fire?
I think quite a few things. I mean, you don't really do that kind of thing unless you have a deep desire to sort of understand something that you don't understand. Yeah. So I think I want to work my work. I want to work it beyond just 50 works, because you don't know what it's telling you until you go over at least 200. You start to understand, but I want to get inside that that energy, that process. So I always say my imagination is my medium. I use my imagination, but then again, I'm doing a process that's highly driven in a sense that I'm either lining things up, sort of understanding how each part of the dynamics of the architectural plans are working amongst each other, dotting them out. Then I'm doing a calculus, and it's thousands of times. So if I say I'm doing a thousand works, it's actually probably about 4,000 or 5,000 layers. So every layer is done by hand, every bit. And that I'm not doing that for. It's about trying to get something from the universe like that you can't get unless you actually drive it through your own hand and your persistence and that discipline. And I find out more the more I do it. And by the time I come to writing the score, I've already written the score because I know it so well and I'm so intimate with it, and I know what numbers are repeated the most, and I know, you know what I mean? Like I've got this whole grip on that site. And so then I am able to understand the emotional harmony that runs through that field of calculus, or, and the dynamics of the way that things are put together in the architecture. And then the architecture actually becomes an instrument. It is the instrument. So when the orchestral score gets played inside, the architecture is completing that, because
the building resonates.
That's the building is the instrument, the biggest instrument.
Yes.
So it's quite incredible how they are absolutely tied together. And that's what I always wanted to find when I was, starting out listening to sound art and not getting it and feeling like I wasn't cool or something, or wasn't good enough, or I didn't have the contemporary art kind of coolness to be in those shows and things like that. But then, I was searching for something much deeper inside myself, and that's why I couldn't actually just sit for that. Like I had to work all these things out and now do just non-stop work on something that, you could go and put some wires on it and hear it hum or something. But no, I want to compose it into the language of music, because they're the same.
There's so much truth and belief in listening to that inner voice and just hearing you speak. In a way, you're taking me back to that jazz improvisation and how you're just gunning it on the flute. And it's that same energy, right, that would sustain your compositions.
Definitely comes into it.
We've just had a text message come in from Diane in Mentone. Thank you so much, Diane. She says, "Hi, Mia. Is there a dream building or structure you'd love to interpret musically but haven't yet?" Awesome question, Diane.
Thanks, Diane. There's so many. There's so many incredible architectural sites on this planet. And there's also the architecture of nature, like Antarctica and space. And there's the architecture of the consciousness, like so in mantra and mudra, and the power of that, like the architecture of that. There is a visualization of that. So there are many different, in India there's some of these astrological sites. There's all sorts of sites. There's these sound kind of domes in Norway. I've forgotten what they're called. Diane, there's a lot. I'd have to really think about it and get back to you specifically which one. But if you happen to follow me, you might see a few.
Wonderful. I would really like to play just a little bit of your score for Federation Square, because my first experience with this work, and that's how I first encountered your art, was that I truly could hear the building and could hear all those fracturing geometries. So listeners, let's have a go. We can start hearing really the geometry there, can't we? Some of the
I'm visualizing the actual drawings, like that. I know that where that's taken from, like the spots in the architectural forms that I know I can see them.
they're there with you, because the design of Federation Square by Lab Architecture Studio and Bates Smart is based on these 7 voids and also these 7 shards. One of probably the most controversial buildings in Melbourne, but I love it because it got us talking about architecture. And it's also one of the youngest to be heritage listed.
Yeah, right. Wow. It's got those huge springs underneath.
Of course.
Those are they called hydraulic? I wouldn't know the name, architectural talk, but the big springs between the train line and so that it, and also particularly around Acme, they're different, the springs, so that wherever they play films or whatever, the springs is super intense shock absorption, so the sounds from outside and from the trains underneath can't feed into the rooms where silent, it needs to be quiet.
And the gallery immediately above as well.
Yeah, so they're all underneath, and I found that amazing. But
so how do those springs feature in the score?
The springs are there because that you hear like certain technical kind of, extended techniques in the strings, and particularly chose strings for that piece because strings are like gymnasts. They're like a ribbon, like gymnastic ribbon. They can, they can mimic anything. They can wobble, strike, grind. They can, slide up and down in a very big scale, like compared to horns are more rigid. So that was for the Sydney Harbour Bridge. But, some of the elements of when I'm translating also become textural. So there'll be a textural element or a dynamic marking. It's a big sort of shifty kind of, messy thing before it becomes a sort of its own body and sound. Yeah.
What happens to the drawings that don't make the cut, that don't end up being as part of the visual set in the symphony? Do they go to your archive?
It's a really good question because actually they all make the cut, but the only thing is sometimes you architects, I have to say architects are beautiful, and like all the ones I've worked with, they're so generous, and so I've had such good working relationships with architects. They've been so like giving, and they'll meet up with me. I've even met Pattersons in Auckland when I was there on my research trip, so flying from New Plymouth to Auckland to meet Andrew, and then I met Don, and I met Rob and from McBride House Ryan, Debbie, and they've all been so lovely and just given me everything I need, like into giving me as much information on the buildings and talking to me about it, and I really appreciate that, and it makes my work so just wonderful. When you work with a great collaborative team,
it's huge.
It really builds you up and brings you into yourself and allows you to really focus on the job and feel good about yourself, and feel like you have permission and that you can go wild and you can just express this and they're right behind you. And so I've had a very good experience like that. But as you said with the architects, they give you tons of, and now I know because some of them are like the left side, the back, the front. Do you know what I mean? So they're the same thing, it's just flipped around. So they sort of go to the side. And then I focus on the real kind of meat in the sandwich, the stuff that is just the real source of everything. And sometimes I will do different takes, like left, right, roof, up, side, back. They're the ones that sort of sit aside a bit. But actually, I did all Fed Square on transparent, some papers so that it would bleed through. so there would just be these kind of pieces with just basically dots all over them, and I use them in another installation, so they sort of carry on to another life as well, those ones. But there's a whole lot of work sitting in my studio because NGV collected 250 of them.
Wow.
And the score, so that there is still a lot in my studio. So I have to put, what do you call it, mothballs. I don't want them to get eaten.
No doubt you create a lot of ideas, and you have a lot of scores and ideas. Do they live, say, in a car park? I've heard some artists or writers describe it. The ones that aren't ready to be born yet, how do you nurture them? Or the ones that don't make the cut, where do they live for you? How does that relationship with the work you're trying to get
they
close
live in
to?
my drawer plans in the studio. Or in, I bought some archival boxes, so they're sort of in boxes, and they're in my drawer plans.
So very, very practically stored, very practically archived.
Yeah.
And that's just something filed away. It's not necessarily something you'll return to and use in future works and future compositions.
No, I probably will at some point, but at the moment, I think I haven't got any deadlines. I'm going into I wanted to do a large drawing work. So I'm looking forward to starting that. I've just come out of finishing the score for Gavette Brewster in New Zealand, and so I want to get back into my studio just to draw, and but those works and the plans that I have, no, I will probably definitely do something with them. I've already done a work of 60 with the Fed Square ones. Yeah.
I questions just come to me, and I wonder, how does the sound of Australia or the Australian architecture and the compositions you're able to create from that vary to this New Zealand composition? Have you noticed any particular differences between our nations?
Every building sounds different, I think, no matter whether... I don't really... for me, it's purely about the language of the architecture and the music, so the systems in those and their structures. So every place is different that I do, so every piece sounds very different. So it's the same thing. It's just, it is very different because it's a different building altogether, and it comes from... This one is particularly interesting because it's not purely just the architecture. It's actually... I've been through Len Lai's... I had a research trip there last year where I went through his massive archive. I had an office in the gallery, and he has a massive... He's an incredible artist. He does kinetic sculptures and tons of these doodle drawings because he believes in doodling because it's got to do with the cave mind and the new mind. So he says every time he doodles and he starts to recognise it's the new mind. So he stops straight away.
Right.
And because he wants to keep that sort of, I don't know whether I don't like saying that sort of pure thing, but it's like he wants to keep that stream of freshness through his consciousness into what he was doing.
Yes.
And I got a whole lot of those. So I've been transposing those into the architect's plans because the architect also built the space based on Len Lai's work as well. So that one has been really quite the hardest one in a way that it involved another artist.
Wow.
And he has such a huge practice. And so in the score for this one, it's really exciting because I've engineered a keyboard to play all Len Lai's sound bites from his cacophonous metal clanging, sound sculptures. And so we've put it with the proper engineer, a system that can, when we're playing, the orchestra's playing my score, the keyboardist will be playing like a keyboardist, but it'll be all boom, like that kind of things like that going out throughout the score.
A bit like the wild 360 synth I saw at the Lady Gaga concert.
Probably. I don't know. I don't know
Double decker 360 degrees
Wow.
of keyboard.
It's not as good as that. Like that's supersonic, like probably $5 billion worth of
That was
you know what I mean?
unreal.
It's like it makes a difference having a big, funded kind of project like that. But I made my discrete keyboard of sound bites, and so that was really amazing to integrate this sound artist sculptures into an orchestral score, so it becomes an instrument. So if he was live, I think he would really appreciate it, because he loved orchestral music as well as he loved the craziest, loudest, harshest, cacophonous kind of horrid sounds at times, like that are just so abrasive, but they're fantastic, and I love it. It's wild. So that's how I've also included his sound into it.
He would be proud of your work and your symphony and the composition, you feel?
I hope so. I did it in the spirit of Len, that's for sure. I went hard like he did. He was I'm nothing to his prolific kind of outpour of work, but I really contacted his energy when I was creating the work. So I hope that he will be happy with what I've done and think it's tasteful, as well as, got that kind of roughness to it as well or something.
Who have been some of your biggest mentors or biggest guides?
My grandfather from Sweden, Stig, he looked after my musical sensitivity as a child. So he was really... He used to record piano and leave it for me when he'd go back to Sweden so I could play with him, on the tape recorder. So him, and then also some teachers. I've had some fantastic, amazing teachers. I had Janine Eaton in undergrad, but then I had Lou Hubbard, and her and I's practice are very different, but she was an incredible sort of power source in the development of my language. And Bernard Sachs, who is no longer with us, he really pushed me to start getting off the canvas and into the bringing the music and all that stuff together. And artists, I have a lot of artists I really like. Eva Hess inspired me at the start, when I only thought that the contemporary art or the world art was the Angry Penguins, like Yossel Bergner, Albert Tucker. Like that's what I thought art was, because I didn't know. I'd go from music school to the NGV, which still had carpet then, and I'd sit in front of the old pieces, especially like the Max Meldrum, and just sit there and just think, wow, how did they do this? Like, just I was in awe of it, but I thought that was contemporary art and the world of art, until I started really reading about Albert Tucker, and then found out about tappies, and I started looking into that. And then, I went for 6 months to this La Trobe Street College to develop a folio for VCA, and Jane Cox, the teacher, saw my picking canvas work, and she said, "You've got to look at this girl, Eva Hess." And then that just blew my mind, and then I was out there in the world. I couldn't believe it, that there was all this other art. Magdalena Abrakanowitz, those huge reliefs.
What does great art mean to you?
Oh, gosh, that means me, my life now, me, who I am, because I've had these incredible art moments in my life, like where art has completely transformed me. Like, or something happens, when you have an art moment, it doesn't happen often at all. It just happens every now and then. And when that happens, that just makes life seem okay, and that you just connect into something there. And I don't know, I can't explain it, but that's what it means to me. It means my life, really. That's my life. I haven't, well, they were all talking about renovations. And family stuff. And I just, and so then that all turned pear-shaped, and I was like, I'm out of there. And then I was like, I'm an artist. That's what I am, and I've just got to go with this. So
what's your biggest piece of advice to young artists or emerging artists?
Totally believe in the weird shit that you've got going on in your mind. Like, unless it's bad. Like, no, but you know what I mean? Like, if you've got something you want to try, experiment with, go there. And also go with, it's not just about seeing perfect stuff. You've got to develop your mistakes, because that is where that's where the stuff unlocks in there, like the imperfection. When you actually let go of trying to be like someone else, or because a lot of artists, they're vulnerable, and I know it because I was once. But if you just, really follow your idea, even if it seems so silly, just do it 500,000 times over, and you will develop your own voice through that. And don't feel pressured to be trendy or be in a certain group, or you have to be like this or that. Just do if you have an idea or something and you really want to explore that, explore it, and don't judge it. That's another thing. Don't judge the way that it looks, if it looks like a 2-year-old's drawing. No, just explore that line. Take that line and start to do it again and again and again. And you will start to realise who you are in that work, what your energy is. And then you start to create the narrative. Like, I could talk so much more about that because it's been a big journey for me. But, that's my advice. I hope that helps somehow.
Amazing advice. I think that's certainly helpful for me, and certainly helpful for so many listeners tuning in tonight. And I am mindful of the time, so I will ask my last question.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, what gives you hope?
Well, my art gives me hope, living inside the systems and all that, the music and everything like that. And also the planet, the beautiful sunrise and the sunset, and the kind of timing of the planets, and beautiful people in my life and that support me and give me courage. And animals. I love animals. So, just continuing on to create gives me sort of a feeling of belonging in this time on Earth. And
amazing. Well, we can't wait to hear your work for New Zealand. And thank you so much for joining me on the program, Mia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me for another evening of Radio Architecture with Ilana Razbash. This live show was broadcast and recorded in the Radio Karim studio on Bunurong country. You can replay this show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and supporting community radio. Take care.
Hi, I'm Pat Tilley
I'm Peter Parker,
from the Chelsea Bomb Beach train station group.
and you're listening to Radio Karim.
Hi, this is Naomi Liba, a composer and vocalist. Keep tuned to Radio Architecture, they rock.